A gamble by Japan's Prime Minister to increase her party's power in Parliament appears to have paid off big time. Broadcaster NHK is projecting that the Liberal Democratic Party of Nagy Takaichi will win more than two-thirds of the seats in the lower house. That would allow the LDP to govern without a coalition partner and make more sweeping policy changes.
Nagy Takaichi's gamble has paid off. The snap election she called in January was seen as a referendum on her leadership.
We sought the public's judgment on a major shift in economic and fiscal policy. We campaigned for a responsible, proactive approach.
And that vision for Japan's future has clicked with voters. Takaichi, an ultra-conservative who became Japan's first woman prime minister in October, has made populist economic promises with the hope of boosting Japanese growth. She has taken a tough stance on immigration, which her critics say has created division in a country with few foreign nationals. Takaichi has also been a keen supporter of changing Japan's pacifist constitution. Internationally, Takaichi has had the endorsement of US President Donald Trump. But relations with Beijing are strained after she suggested that Japan would intervene if China invaded Taiwan. Her popularity, particularly among younger voters, and a strong social media presence has worked. However, her conservative Liberal Democratic Party, or LDP, which has governed Japan for most of the past 7 decades, has been struggling. Scandals and a new opposition alliance have caused serious challenges for the party. Opinion is divided over Takaichi's victory.
Over the past several years, the LDP has been quite liberal. With Takaichi, things shifted towards a more conservative position. And I think that led to this result.
I find it somewhat disappointing. It seems the opinions of younger people are not being reflected very much. Or rather, there's a visible lack of effort among young people themselves to try to have their views reflected. I find that unfortunate.
Nagy Takaichi will now have to live up to her pledge to work, 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 work and work.
All right, let's cross over to Stephen Nog in Tokyo. He's a professor at the Department of Politics and International Studies at the International Christian University there. Welcome to DW, Stephen. You've got a big job explaining this to us. When you look at today's results, what is the headline for you? What story are these voters telling us so clearly, apparently?
Well, I think at the foreign policy level, the biggest headline would be "Thank you, Mr. Xi." I don't think that Prime Minister Takaichi would have had such an overwhelming response to her pushback against Chinese economic coercion and the massive disinformation campaign after her statements back in November about Taiwan. It's allowed her to demonstrate her leadership. It's allowed her to demonstrate her ability to create broad coalitions and partnerships globally to push back against this kind of domestic behavior or international behavior. But at the international level, the headline would be inflation, wages, and creating a better environment for families. These are the big problems that are facing ordinary Japanese today, and she's going to have a big challenge at dealing with these issues. And you probably noticed I didn't say immigration or revising the Constitution, and that was quite intentional. These aren't the priorities for ordinary Japanese citizens.
How do the ordinary Japanese feel about the relationship that you mentioned? China on one side, the other side, naturally, I guess, is the US-Japan alliance. Takaichi has said that it's limitless. How do we understand that in practical terms? How's that going to play out in Japan now?
Well, the Japanese have always been, worried about whether the United States would abandon them or not for some deal with China or otherwise. And this has been something that they've worried about since the end of the Cold War period. And President Trump, with his some unorthodox policies, his Liberation Day, and of course, his approach to Xi Jinping has made the Japanese more anxious But I think Prime Minister Takaichi has used that expression, a limitless alliance, to demonstrate that the United States and Japan are a relationship that goes beyond leaders, that they have shared interests in peace and stability in the region, and ensuring that ill-considered military intervention over Taiwan or gray zone tactics and hybrid tactics in the South China Sea would be really destabilizing for the whole region, and most importantly, destabilizing for the Chinese economy, which spills over to the political system in China. From the Chinese point of view, let's be frank, this relationship is an economic relationship. They have deep mutual security concerns about each other, and these aren't going away. And I think whether Takaichi was elected or Santa Claus was elected, there will still be huge problems in this relationship.
How much easier is it for her to tackle these problems, Stephen, just briefly, with this now supermajority?
Well, she doesn't have resistance, and this is a good and bad. The coalition parties, partners such as Komeito, put a softer tone on foreign policy and domestic policy, but she could be too enthusiastic about the supermajority and not understanding that you still need to create consensus with other parties to push forward on foreign policy and domestic policy. Overreach or just the right amount of balance with coalition parties? That's the question.
Stephen, well done. Thank you so much. Professor at the International Christian University. Great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony.